in the course of this discussion. The United States has remained true to its longer history of political repression and use of its criminal punishment system to quash dissent. In addition, it falls short of meeting its international human rights as provided in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UN treaties which it has ratified, retaining reservations and such. Its violations are of basic human rights protected in the International Convention to Eliminate All Forms of Racial Discrimination, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, as well as the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, and Degrading Treatment and Punishment, which is readily associated, though it should not be limited to, the death penalty, wherein the majority of the people who are subject to the death penalty in the United States are, of course, people of color. Police in the United States, along with other arms of law enforcement, continue to be used to suppress efforts demanding recognition, protection, and fulfillment of social and economic human rights, namely the right to education, health, housing, work, and social security. Police still routinely make unfounded mass arrests and detentions to keep people off the streets and out of the eye of the all too accommodating press, whether that press is embedded or not. There is a return to the police-initiated violence at demonstrations, arrest of unembedded journalists, most notably recent arrest of Amy Goodman of Democracy Now!, the use of so-called less lethal weapons against peaceful protesters resulting in serious injuries. Ongoing and pervasive profiling throughout the United States on the basis of race, immigration status, national origin have resulted in increased migrant deaths, mass incarceration, and the use of torture against African Americans and other persons of color. In addition to the Abu Ghraib-style Chicago police torture cases, known as the Burge cases of 1973, is the current case of the San Francisco 8, about which Richard will talk. Not only have the perpetrators never been brought to justice, but two of them now serve as agents and are one of his patrollers, shall we say. A practice that began in the United States under the so-called Fugitive Slave Act, when Africans liberated themselves from bondage and sought freedom in the North. And as a result, patrollers were sent to the North to capture them, to take them back to the South. It is a gross insult that the United States should sponsor the current exhibit, the Underground Railroad, as an indication of any measure of success in respecting the human rights of African people in the United States. The government's increasing disregard for the U.S. Constitution and its human rights obligations is further displayed in its treatment of Muslims, Arabs, and South Asians. And again, we will have more on that in the course of this discussion. In 1976, a congressional subcommittee, popularly known as the Church Committee, was formed to investigate and study the FBI's covert action program. The Church Committee concluded that the FBI, quote, conducted a sophisticated vigilante operation aimed squarely at preventing the exercise of First Amendment rights of speech, association, and today, with greater vigor, of religion, we would add, on the theory that preventing the growth of dangerous groups and the propagation of dangerous ideas would protect the national security and deter violence. The committee's factual findings reveal massive human rights violations against U.S. citizens based on race, political ideas, and political affiliations. In the final reports of the committee, permanent means of congressional review were recommended. Shockingly, though not surprisingly, none of the recommendations made by the Congressional Committee addressed the human rights violations suffered by the dozens of civil and human rights activists who were victimized by the United States government's political repression against African Americans, Puerto Ricans, and Native American communities. Such repression resulted in murder, injuries, false arrests, malicious prosecution, and lengthy imprisonment of scores of political activists, many of whom remain in prison today, whose names are unknown to us beyond the one or two who have strong defense committees. Today's political prisoners, prisoners of war, and exiles were civil and human rights activists who became the victims of COINTELPRO. These techniques were designed to disrupt the community and to disrupt the movement. They were successful in doing those things and as a result have left a significant leadership vacuum only to be filled by ne'er-do-well opportunists, as is indicated by the current state of affairs of the Black community and other communities of color. I will provide further information in responding to questions.
Thank you, Afia.